going on, guys? It's Simone. We're here in my hotel room at Seattle. We just finished up and got back.
Oh, yeah.
If you guys watched that feature match, that pretty much says it all. But, you know, it was a really awesome time. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the deck profile for the deck. I ended up getting 61st place. I would have made top 32 if Billy Brake had not destroyed me on stream. And Robert ended up X3, which is still really good. He was one win away from day 2. Now, the thing is, we played the same deck card for card. I think the only one card difference.
I played Sticky String versus Doga.
Right. Yeah. There's one Kaiju difference. So how this video is going to work is, it's going to be a long, very in-depth video. So part 1 is going to be on my channel. Part 2 is going to be on his. So I'll put a link to his video in the description so you guys can check it out. Because we figure since it's going to be such a long video, we might as well break it up in parts for you guys. So the thing is, where we want to start with this is why we played what we played. So we did not play Kaiju Zoo.
That's true.
We played Pure. And the reason we played Pure is because Pure has... Zoodiac is inherently a deck that wants to go first. And the problem with Kaiju Zoo is that you're running an entire engine of cards that wants to go second in a deck that wants to go first. So it really, to us, didn't make sense to play Kaiju Zoo, at least for our main build. We are siding Kaijus, but we figured we would optimally design the deck for the mirror because we knew we were going to be playing a ton of mirror matches, even though I didn't.
You didn't.
But I'll get into that in a tournament report later. But we figured it makes the most sense to build the best deck for the mirror going first, because it just makes the most sense to do it that way. We're kind of breaking the theory of, oh, you're going to be playing more games going in your side deck than your main deck. Well, this build, actually, you play 2 out of 3 games with your main deck rather than your side deck, which is really interesting. So we toppled that whole theory over. The only other thing is, too, if Robert has anything he wants to say since he's recording, he's just going to start talking and say it, and then he might hand me the camera, so we might be going back and forth. But I just want to let you guys know how the format of the video is going to be. Let's go ahead and get right to it.
Alrighty.
So, starting off with 3 Rat, this is nothing special. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious, yeah. Like, if there's things that don't need to be explained, I'm not going to explain it. So, like, 3 Viper, again, obvious for Pure. 1 Thoroughblade we can talk about, because a lot of Pure builds run 2. And we found in testing that Thoroughblade, especially Robert found this out really early on, Thoroughblade can be a very dead card a lot of the time, and it really doesn't get you anywhere. Like, the cycling effect's really good, but the problem is, when you draw it, most of the time it's dead. And like, even though it's a Zoodiac monster, so like, sure, it like feeds your engine, you can start going into like the Zoodiac combo. Like, most of the time, it's also very risky to play it as well, because if you send the rat and draw, like, and they can ghost ogre it, like, it's very susceptible to a lot of things, but it's necessary for some OTK combos. So that's why we kind of cut it to 1, because we figured 1's enough, it's searchable via Tenki, via Broad Bowl, all these different things. And quite frankly, I don't know about you, I was totally happy with 1.
I was absolutely happy with 1. The only thing that potentially would have been an issue for me is running out of zoos in the main deck, which only came up once, and it was in a massive grind game with Noid, and I still won because I had 3 Whiptail in hand. Like,
that's true.
So I didn't have any issues with running out of cards. The other thing is, like, usually when I have Thoroughblade available for its effect, I'd rather have the zoo cards that I discard for its effect than have another card.
It's true. So Thoroughblade's okay, but I mean, honestly, it filled its role perfectly for this weekend. Okay, so moving on, 3 copies of Terratop, only 1 ulti, sorry. And Takatomborg. Like, this needs no explanation here as well.
I drew this card so much.
Did you?
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah. I actually drew it once when I needed to draw it, and because he had like some effect negator or something, but this is obvious just to get you to Invoker and stuff. This card's just Terratop, Autotop, same, that whole saying. 2 copies of Max C. This is pretty much one of the format defining cards. Like, if you're playing anything, you should play Max C. And this is why we felt like you shouldn't be playing a 60 card deck in general. Like, at the time of recording this, YCS Seattle's still concluding. I think they might be in the top 16 right now. Yeah. But the problem with 60 card decks is that means that they have a even less of a chance, which didn't really make sense that I just said. They have a much smaller chance of getting Max C, which basically can win you the game. So that's kind of like what scrapped 60 card anything for us out the window. And
learning how to play Max C was the most important thing we learned in testing. If you play Max C right, you basically instantly win.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, a lot of people, and, like, people were kind of giving me shit, like, when I was in my feature match, like, oh, why didn't you just, like, immediately max C, like, the rat or something like that? The thing is, like, Billy could have just made Dryden and just, like, pass, and I just 1-for-1, and my hand was so bad that it was, like, very inoptimal for me to do that. So what you're supposed to do with this card is you're supposed to wait till they make Tiger Mortar, because when they detach the special rat, you chain it to that activation, you're going to get the 1-for-1 there, and then they are forced to give you a +1 at the least, because they still need to make Trident, otherwise the rat is susceptible. You can do the same thing with Barrage and also Invoker, but there's very specific times where Max C is much better than just, like, dropping it on, like, you know, after special summoning Terror Top, or dropping it on rat, because you can force them to give you more cards to just, like, completely just blow them out at that point.
Another great time is when they had Top on the board and Rat, because a lot of players would summon Top, get Borg, then normal summon the Rat in case you had the Ghost Ogre, so that they could overlay for Invoker and get Whiptail. But once they do that, if you drop the Maxi, now they have to play, you know, they have to go into 2 Xyz monsters in order to keep themselves from losing their board. And that's huge.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of, like, you could kind of tell the difference between some of, like, the skill level of players as to when they max seed, because like there's so many instances where, like, you could have max seed at a better time, but they just shotgunned it most of the time, and it was just like it didn't do them any good. And I feel like that served us well. I feel. Rounding out the monster lineup, just 2 copies of Ogre. We were trying 3. But the problem with this card is you don't want, like, 2 of it. I mean, and I know it's the whole thing. Like, that's not why you should not run 3 of a card. But this is, like, a card that, as good as it is, 3 of it is not ideal. And we figured out in testing that just 2 was really just got the job done. There's so many just opportune moments, especially in the Zoo Mirror, to just, you know, Ogre. And it's a very good going second card, but, like, obviously we're wanting to go first. So we want to obviously have some defensive cards for if we lose the die roll. But, I mean, it's a very flexible card.
Yeah. And as you'll see, we have a lot of defensive cards that are way better going first than Ogre is.
Absolutely. So that's the monsters. I think it's 15? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep, 15. 15 monsters. Moving on to the spells. 3 copies of Barrage. This card is broken as fuck. There's a reason this is a $100 card at the moment.
Best card of the format.
Like, we were talking about this. This card is so good because it basically breaks Zoodiac's reliance on normal summons. And, like, that's... If you know how to hold Barrage for when you absolutely need it, like, sometimes your opponent has to waste everything, and then you drop Barrage, and they're just screwed. And just, you know, if you can manage to keep it up while you have Tenki or something, like, this card's just amazing.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Speaking of Tenki, 3 Tenki, this should be obvious. If you're playing Pure, you should be playing 3 of this, because, you know, you gotta have your 12 ways to get to Rat. So onto the 2-ofs. 2 copies of Twin Twister. We've had some good discussion here.
We have talked a lot about this.
We've talked a lot about this. So I'll go ahead. You can start this discussion on this one.
So I've seen a lot of people playing Cosmic Cyclone, and I just feel like it's a bad card. Like, it's good in some instances for making sure for getting rid of pendulum scales and making sure that they're banished from the game, or hitting Barrage so that it doesn't so it doesn't go under an Xyz monster. But under any other circumstances in a deck that works as well in a simplified game state as ours does, it is absolutely just so much better to be able to wipe out 2 back row. Because the thing is, you want to be able to shotgun this at the beginning of your turn, because even if you hit D-Barrier, you are going to hit D-Barrier no matter what, but you might also get rid of their Solemn Strike or their Storming. And even if they use D-Barrier off of Twin Twisters, you don't have to waste the cards in your hand. You can hold on to your Rats, you can hold on to your Whiptails, and then you don't lose any cards from hitting the D-Barrier. And just hitting 2 back row, especially during my opponent's end phase, just won me so many games that Cosmic Cyclone wouldn't have. The only reason the OCG ran Cosmic Cyclone was because of artifacts. Because they have the artifact engine just like in everything.
They also ran it though too because their format was basically like almost tier 0 and everyone was running Zoo. Arguably Cosmic Cyclone's better at stopping Barrage. And that's like arguably. And so that's why. But the other thing too with Twin Twister is the fact that this card, especially not knowing what else we're gonna play, because our format has not come to the point of the OCG where it's going to be, you know, all Zoo. There was a lot of Zoo, don't get me wrong, but there was still decks. I played only 4 Zoo decks in my 10 rounds, which I still find absurd. Technically 5, but I just find that like ridiculous. So the thing is, Twin Twister is the best card going against like Rogue, because you can hit multiple threats at once, especially like in the end phase. Like knowing when to use this too is also very important, because if you set it knowing you're going to run into D-Barrier, you can let your opponent proceed with their turn. Hopefully you can survive with your back row. Then you Twin Twister, hit their set D-Barrier that is going to be completely worthless during their turn in the end phase. Now you're not going to lose to D-Barrier, and you're pretty much good to go.
Yep.
So we decided on 2. We tried 3, but we ultimately cut it down to 2 just for better cards. And I was okay.
To see it sometimes, but not
sometimes,
all the
but
time.
not all the time. You know, so I mean, I didn't really feel like I needed a 3rd.
Yeah,
I remember when we were testing 3, I was drawing 2 of this a lot.
Yeah,
and that's like the worst, because the fact you already have to take the minus. Yeah. So double instant fusion. Moving on.
Everybody's doing it.
Everyone's doing it. I mean, we have Norden, and yeah, the OCG never had Norden with this deck, and the recovery plays that Instant Fusion provides to the deck is insane.
It's like having 5 barrages, 2 of which you can play in the same turn as the other barrage.
Like they can have an out to your rat, they can have an out to barrage, and then you can Instant Fusion, and you still can combo. Like, so they need 3 outs, or Dimensional Barrier, technically. But, like, if they don't have D-Barrier, they need 3 separate outs to be able to, like, stop something like that. It's also, at the very worst, this card is a 1-card Gagaga Samurai, a 1-card Emerald, or in our case, a 1-card Roach. But
that came in clutch so many times for me.
Yeah. So I mean, it's again 3. I think is overkill, because with 1 Norden, like you can recycle Norden, but I mean, I never had a moment where like I needed to recycle it to use a 2nd copy.
No.
Like, and it's not like 2. I feel like was the perfect number. So this is where things get interesting. So 2 copies of Chalice and 2 copies of My Body as a Shield.
These cards were the cards that we, like, worked around with the most out of our entire deck, I think.
Yeah.
We were playing around with these 2 cards more than anything else.
Yeah, so early on, like, I was maining 3 of this. And then once I saw everyone was playing the Kaiju build, I was telling Robert, like, we need to play this.
We really need,
And this card, oh my god.
Oh, yeah.
This card
is so good.
We were just telling each other stories of what we did with this card.
Yep.
Like, I hit a Metal Foe scale and won with this card. Like, it stops. Okay, so, but before we just start getting caught up in the story, so there's a reason we decided to play 2 and 2. So the biggest thing is, between all 4 of these, they're all outs to Trident. That's the biggest thing. And they're good going 1st and 2nd. If you go 1st and you draw any of these, you can just set them, and they're defensive cards. If you go 2nd, going into a Zoo mirror match, then they have, Dark Hole, or if, they played a Trident or something like that, that's where My Body comes in really good. But Chalice is also really good because it's very flexible against a lot of other decks, because it just acts as basic and effect negation. So we pretty much came on this ratio because there's so many different things that each card does well. Stops Ogre. This stops Ghost Ogre too.
I won a game yesterday because they didn't know that My Body stopped Ghost Ogre.
Yeah, and in testing we did the My Body versus a My Body, but it never came up in the event, unfortunately. But yeah, so the thing was, we settled on this ratio because there's certain matchups where, like, this card's amazing and this card sucks, and vice versa. So in terms of side decking, it's really easy to just take out what's bad for that matchup and put in just the side deck cards very easily.
Exactly. And I personally was running 1 Book of Moon before.
But Cimoooooooo actually convinced me. So my thinking about Book of Moon was that it is a better defensive card than Forbidden Chalice, especially in the mirror match, because if you have the Book of Moon face down, you can flip their rat face down. Their rat is stuck there. And then you can run into it with a Whiptail under an Xyz monster, and their rat is gone for the game. The problem is you run into the opposite problem with Book of Moon when you are playing it offensively, because if you flip down a Trident with Book of Moon and they chain Whiptail to put onto the Trident, I have to get something banished to get rid of that Trident because I can't kill any face downs.
But Chalice
stops the Whiptail entirely. And so I decided to go with that because I would rather have a card that could stop opponents' plays fairly decently and also stop the Whiptail than the other way around.
Chalice also makes the attack of the Zoodiac exceed 0.
That is really big, and that actually ran into we ran into that in testing a lot.
Yeah, where like so your opponent thinks like they've baited out whatever, like your D-Bear, your Strike, whatever, and they think they're clear. They'll go and attack with like a Trident with like a Whiptail, and then you just flip Chalice, and then they just lose the effect of Banish. Their monster's at 0, and if they're attacking an attack position monster, the Trident also dies on top of it. So, I mean, Chalice is just amazing. And then we said My Body. I think we covered everything. Ghost Ogre, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber was the big reason we played this.
Dark Hole
Regeki, Trident. Like I said, you can also hit Metal Foe scales with this if they destroy a monster. Which,
and if Barrage targets a monster,
if Barrage targets a monster, you can hit Barrage. There's a lot of applications outside of just board wipes that people actually like really don't know about. Torrential's a big one too, because a lot of the players of the top tails were mating Torrential because it's just such an incredible card.
It's just the blowout card, but we'll talk about that in a second.
So then to wrap up everything, for the spells, 2 Dark Hole and a Regeki because we need board wipes of our own, and since we don't have the Kaiju engine, pretty much if you draw this and like a rat, like you pretty much are set. So.
And between all of these cards, we actually had more answers than our opponents had ins for the rat combo.
Correct. I think if we added it up, I think it's like 90. It's like over. We have like over
a 90%
chance. Like so. There's over a 90% chance for us to open it out to their board, or just Trident, if anything. There's over a 90% chance to open it out to Trident, where the rat combo only has an 85% chance to open with the combo. So we felt that was because Trident was the only thing we were worried about, because that's like pretty much your biggest like play stopper.
Absolutely.
Okay. So then moving on to the traps. That's 17 spells, by the way. We have 3D Barrier. This needs no explanation. This card's just, like, ridiculous. Is there anything you want to say about this? I can't even think, like, it's D Barrier.
This card really shouldn't be in the game.
This is, like, the most unhealthy card ever created.
It's so bad.
Yeah. 3 Strike. Strike's just, again, amazing.
And it was interesting, on the live stream during your feature match, they were commenting about how a lot of players are only running 2 strikes, and I can't imagine that.
I agree.
Like, in testing, opening with strike was just, it was, like, every time I opened with strike, I was like, okay, I'm good for the next turn.
Yeah.
Like
the biggest problem with strike is that it's susceptible to back row removal, but a lot of players have actually just foregone that because they're only
playing. A lot of players are running Cosmic Cyclone.
Cosmic Cyclone,
which only hits 1 back row, and if it's your barrier, then they're sunk.
Exactly. So because then you have your strike and the barrier. We were playing Warning at first, and we decided to cut it just because we're running the My Bodies too. So it's like there's a lot of life points we're already expending, so we figured just these strikes were enough. Strike's also very good in the Infernoid matchup, which arguably is the worst matchup, and so having 3 strike for that matchup is very important. But I opened 3 of these in one game. That was
strike can stop hand traps.
Strike can,
which is really cool. That happened to me once.
Happened to me. You can stop like Whiptail equipping. DD Crow, Max C, Ghost Ogre.
Yep.
This card just hits a lot. The last trap's combo because it's Zoodiac, so you're going to play combo.
And then the spicy bit, our favorite bit. This took us, these 2 cards alone took us about 6 hours of testing.
Yeah, so this is a 41 card deck, so there's only 9 traps? Yeah, 9 traps. So Torrential and Emptiness. So originally we weren't playing either of these, and then you started playing Emptiness, and we realized this is like the best fucking card.
Yeah.
Ever. There's so many setups where if your opponent does something not knowing you have Emptiness, you can Emptiness and lock them out, and they can't do anything unless they have a board wipe or a Twin Twister, which is there's only 4 of in their deck, maybe. So Emptiness is just so good. An example is if they Kaiju you, they give you a Kaiju when you have Emptiness, and they summon Rat. You flip Emptiness, they're sunk.
They're done.
They're just done.
You just start running into them.
Yeah, they can't barrage. They can't just do rat combo. There's nothing they can do.
I had a matchup where all I had was an Emerald on the field, and I won with just that and Emptiness because they couldn't do anything about it.
And then Torrential was the other MVP. Because a lot of people don't play around this because they will just overcommit, because once they test for D-Barrier and Strike, maybe Emptiness as well, they just go off and do their whole combo. So essentially, if they try to OTK you, you flip Torrential and you just flip the board back in your favor.
Yep.
I even use this on my own turn, summoning my own monster to Torrential and clear the board, just because that was a play I had to make. But if I didn't have Torrential, I actually couldn't have done that.
Yep.
And as you guys have probably seen, just watching the feature matches and stuff, there's a lot of good players running this card. And if you're honestly, you should be maining this card. Like, even if you're not playing Zoo, you should be maining this because it's just a blowout.
It's so good.
You also sometimes can't play around it. Like, you have to sometimes play into it because you don't have a choice. Like, it's...
Like the first time I ever got to use it against you.
Oh my god. That's a story. I'll tell that story.
Yeah.
Okay, so 41 cards. That's it for the main deck.
And it's 41 cards exactly because we had to run both
because,
of those.
yeah, Torrential and we were trying to cut one and we just couldn't do it. So I'm going to take it now. I'll let Robert do the extra. I'll give him some FaceTime.
All right.